to advise members that apologies for absence.
Lord Mayor, just a point of order, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, I would like to call a vote for the suspension of standing orders so that we can debate an emergency motion about the arms fair. So please can we have a vote tonight to suspend standing orders and debate this motion?
Councillor, we can deal with this.
The motion is seconded there, Lord Mayor.
Is this mic on? Yeah. You can all hear me now. You can hear me, I hope, Tom. Yes? We will discuss this at the end of business.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I look forward to that.
Thank you.
I'd like to advise members that apologies for absence have been received from Councillors Ian Byrne, Joanne Calvert, Nick Crofts, Jane Corbett, Patrick Hurley, Malcolm Kennedy, Doreen Knight, Calvin Smeeder, Carol Story, Roy Gladden, Elizabeth Hayden and Lucille Harvey, Joe Dunne and Lisa Gorm. Are there any further apologies to report? No.
I would like to remind members that this is a key meeting held in public and not a public meeting. Can I therefore request that everyone present, including the public, treat this meeting accordingly, which will enable the business to be dealt with effectively. The use of social media and filming for reporting proceedings is permitted during council meetings. This does not extend to the filming of members of the public, and anyone wishing to film the proceedings are also particularly directed to the very sensitive issue of filming children without the express permission of their parents. We were all shocked and so deeply saddened at the sudden passing of our friends and colleagues, Ros Groves and Tim Jeeves. Can I ask you, if you're able to stand, would you stand with me and we will observe a minute's silence in their memory. Thank you, everybody. Can I advise members that this will be the last council meeting for our Director of Adult Services and Health, Martin Farron, who is retiring from the council. Since joining us in August 2018, Martin's vision has been one of providing health and social care services that improve people's quality of life, health and well-being, whilst promoting independence. Martin has sought to focus on putting service users in control and providing them with greater choice when it comes to meeting their individual needs. On behalf of full council, can I take this opportunity to thank Martin for his contribution to the council and city and wish him well for the future And can I ask you all in the time-honoured way to put your hands together for Martin?
Only required to declare at meetings any disclosable pecuniary or prejudicial interests, in which case the member will need to leave the hall during consideration of the item. Are there any such declarations? Chris?
Declare an interest on item 7 for obvious reasons, although I seek clarification because it's 7.3, but there are some amendments to that particular item, whether I leave on that particular part of the motion or the motion as a whole. Happy to leave on the actual item as a whole, whether that's best to do so. Okay, individual item. Also, if there is a debate on an arms fair or a vote on an arms fair, I would declare my interest in consistency with the previous meeting as chair of audit committee and leave the meeting during that item. Okay.
Can I move that the minutes of the City Council meeting held on the 21st of July 2021 be approved? Is that agreed? Can I advise that 9 public questions have been received? Copies of questions received, together with responses provided, will be circulated to councillors and issued to those members of the public during the coming days. Can I also advise that a number of written council questions have been received from councillors? Copies of questions received and associated responses will be issued to questioners and circulated to all councillors during the coming days. Can I invite Councillor Abdul Kadir to move the recommendation on this item, which is item 4, Abdul?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd just like to thank everybody who's been involved in putting this together, all our partners, all our stakeholders and everybody. And I'd like to move that the Community Safety Partnership Plan for 2021-2024, as set out in Appendix 1 to the report submitted, be endorsed and adopted with immediate effect.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think there's no agreement really, no disagreement in relation to this document. I think it's a good document, actually, and I think it's well put together, and there's a lot obviously that we can agree on, particularly in relation what I like to see in terms of the home event tax that we've had in relation to the city centre and some of the plans in terms of that you've got in there to work with partners to deal with that. I just, looking through the document, it seems very obviously city centre focused, and there doesn't seem to be much in the way of looking at when we're trying to build safer communities, reaching out in other ways, particularly looking at anything around licensing, for example. I take, for example, some of the issues that we had in Walton Village during the last lockdown and in other places as well, is that I think the document could possibly have some note to things like that and actually look at informing members of the community how they can kind of build partnerships locally, either through pub watch schemes or through cumulative impact studies or something like that. Those are only a few ideas, but overall I think the document is well received and we'll vote for this item, but therefore that might be a useful suggestion as part of that.
Thank you, Councillor Radford.
What I would say, my Lord Mayor, a document only tells part of the story. The important part of the story on community safety is the commitment of a lot of our officers and our partners in the police and the community. Despite some harrowing incidents that have been deeply moving in the last year, Liverpool has had a consistently one of the safest cities in the country for people to enjoy and facilitate. And I think we shouldn't lose sight of that. I think we should also, with a degree of respect and dissent from Chris's comments earlier, we've had some excellent community initiatives. I know there's times we're not supposed to name council officers, but I think in this case it would be met with good approval. We've had some excellent work with the likes of Joe and Matthews, with joint police work across Tewbrook and Anfield, some of the difficult parts of Townsend Lane. We've had some excellent working relationships there. We've had support from the youth services there. So I actually do disagree with Chris respectfully. Whilst the document may not reflect work in the communities, this council has an excellent record of doing so. And I think there are times when, regardless of what political stripe we wear, it's important we thank the staff and commitment that we've been given. There are some practical challenges going forward. We're under budgetary pressure. We'll be under the budgetary pressure for the youth work that prevents some of the crime. We will be under budgetary pressure to do simple things like repair of alley gates. One project I was deeply involved with rolling out across the city. So there are some challenges, but I think the document we welcomed, but what's more important than the document is the commitment of the partners and the council to deliver real changes on the ground, and I think we should all welcome and commend that. Thank you, Mark.
Are there any other speakers? No? Is the recommendation agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Can you all hear me all right? Sorry guys, I'm not sure whether I'm just getting feedback. If you start looking fed up with my voice, I'll know you can definitely hear me. Right, we're moving on to item 5. Can I advise members that, as advised by Mayor Joanne Anderson, there have been no urgent key executive decisions taken in the last cycle. Item 6, can I advise that Mayor Joanne has no announcements to make at this evening's meeting. Item 7, can I invite Councillor Ruth Bennett to move the recommendations on this item, please?
Can I move that the recommendations 2 through to 5 as set at pages 70 to 79 of the agenda be approved and implemented with immediate effect, and the recommendation 1 relating to the format of council meetings for the remainder of this year be referred to the Constitutional Issues Committee to be held in October following consultation with members. The Mayor and Leaders Meeting and political groups to be invited to feed their views to the Constitutional Issues Committee. Officers will be requested to produce and circulate clear guidance to all members on arrangements for the conduct of council meetings, including any clarity on submission of motions and resultant deadlines before the next meeting of full council.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kemp, have you withdrawn your amendments?
No, I haven't withdrawn it, my Lord Mayor, but I am happy for it to be referred to the Constitutional Issues Committee. But I just would like to comment on the motion moved by Councillor Bennett, which I approve of. This is the 4th council meeting in a row where opposition parties, and perhaps even members of the controlling party, have found out at less than 24 hours notice the final format for the meeting. So we agreed 6 weeks ago that it was going to be two-themed, but it was only at 5:30 last night when Chris Walsh rang me so that I could plan the speakers from my group, etc., for today's meeting. So it is absolutely clear that we've got to have good advance notice, otherwise this council cannot operate properly. So I'm supporting the motion on that basis, but I'm trying to reinforce the need for us all to do it properly as a council.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Crowe?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I will also be supporting the motion from Councillor Bennett. I had kind of prepared to speak a little bit about my concerns with respect to the first recommendation, and I'm pleased that it's going to be referred to Constitutional Issues Committee, because the kind of thematic debate approach, whilst it's beneficial, it means we can get really deep into something important to the city. It does mean that rank and file backbench councillors have very little access to an actual executive decision-making body, which is either the cabinet makes decisions or this council. So we really feel that all councillors from all parties should have the opportunity to bring motions to this body and have them properly debated and have an opportunity to, have good outcomes for our city. So we'll be pushing for a hybrid model with some in-depth debates on the themes, and also motions debated with plenty of opportunity for opposition parties. And we believe, we've been going through a lot of change this last couple of years. There's been a lot of upheaval to how we do business. But as it stands, the Green Party haven't had a council motion debated by this council since the 16th of January 2019, and that's far too long for us to be able to put our ideas to this council for a proper debate. So when it comes to constitutional issues, committee, the Green Party will be pushing for a hybrid approach where every councillor gets a chance to have their voice heard. That's better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. There are no more speakers. So are we agreed with the recommendations the councillors agreed to as well? You all agreed? Feel free to be loud, guys. I did hear it. Right, we're moving on to item 8. Can I call on Councillor Nick Small as a member of the cross-party working group to introduce the report and move the recommendation, please?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say a few words about the report and the context in which it's being moved tonight. The boundary review has been going on for a couple of years now in Liverpool. It's obviously been held up by the pandemic and by lockdown. And the cross-party group has been meeting throughout those couple of years, and I've been part of that cross-party group, and I want to thank all the other members of that cross-party group and officers for the work supporting this review and supporting what's gone on. There's been a lot of work that's gone on in the background on this. Members will recall, Lord Mayor, that back in January of this year, the Council unanimously accepted a submission to retain 90 councillors. We did that based on the work that the cross-party group had done. That was done unanimously with the support of all parties within the council. And we did that based on a lot of research that we'd done, a lot of work that we'd done with frontline councillors, looking at the impact of austerity, of social media on the demands of councillors, but also looking at the work that we'd all done as councillors throughout the pandemic, and how councillors of all parties and right across the country, including in Liverpool, had really stepped up to bring together communities, bring together partners, and play that frontline community leadership role in a way that we'd never had to do before. And we did that, we've got all that research. Since then, Lord Mayor, we've obviously had the Cala review, we've had the direction from the Secretary of State, and part of that has said that they want to see a small reduction in the number of councillors on Liverpool City Council. And the council has taken the view, quite rightly I think, that we want to work constructively with the commissioners on a journey of improvement to take this city forward. So it's in that context, Lord Mayor, that the cross-party group is submitting this report tonight for consideration of the council, and that the commissioners have supported this, that we go down to 85 councillors, a reduction of 5 councillors, which is a 5.5% reduction. But we've done that, and we've said that's the biggest amount that we can see a reduction in the number of councillors without having a significant negative impact. And that's reflected within this report tonight. If we go down any further than 85 as a council size, we won't be able to ensure robust leadership, we won't be able to hold that leadership to account through the scrutiny function, and we won't be able to perform that community role. So it's in that context that I'm moving this recommendation from the cross-party group tonight. Recommendation A to D, as set out in the report submitted, be approved, and that the revised submission for a future council size of 85 councillors, together with associated population and electoral forecasts up to and including 2027, as set out in pages 80 to 252 of the agenda, be submitted to the Local Government Boundary Commission for England for consideration. And I hope this can command support from councillors of all parties tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Small. Can I ask people to indicate now if they wish to speak on this item? Yes, Councillor Radford, can I ask you to move the addendum, standing in your name, and is it seconded before you do that? Seconded. Thank you.
My Lord Mayor, I would also like to thank the colleagues, particularly Councillor Small, Ruth, for their candid and quite sometimes sharing openly dilemmas this council has to make and its judgment call now to respond. But I think the biggest thanks I'd like to express, and I don't want to embarrass him too much, is Mike Jones. The amount of work and detail that Mike has had to do has been phenomenal on top of normal workload. And I think it's, right sometimes we actually do name people, and maybe it's one of the fine times when we get told off for doing so. So thanks, Mike. It is appreciated. I'm moving an amendment that doesn't change the request of the council, because at the last time we had a debate over the size of the council, my own group did take a different view. We suggested that the population growth of the city projected would justify having more wards, not less. That's on record. And the majority, in fact all the other groups, voted that down, and we respect that. And we went with the view that 90 was right. This paper is a bit too hard for us to swallow in the narrative, because the paper says that the council submission as it stands, that it will be a great opportunity. Councillors will have more resources. We will have more infrastructure to support us. And we will be better able to represent our residents. And I'm going to be honest, that's just dishonest. That is spurious. We're going for 85. Let's be honest about why we're going for 85. It's the least worst deal we think the commissioners and the boundary review will accept. It's not what we want. We voted unanimously to go for 90. Not only will it have 5% less councillors, what that ignores is that we will have a projected growth of population of 11%, and what also ignores that we've actually had a population growth since the last boundary review, almost 20 years ago. So, and it is an approximation. The average councillor coming out of the review next year will, within a short period, have to represent 30+% more residents per councillor. So you'll have 30% more residents to represent. You won't necessarily be twinned with another councillor, so if you're ill or got work appointments or travelling away, you won't have other ward councillors to fall back on. And you will probably have fewer council officers supporting us. So my amendment says that we do go along with the proposals because it's the least worst. But we're not doing because it's going to make things better. It's not going to mean we're going to have a better sense of scrutiny because we'll be under more pressure. We're doing it under duress. And sometimes we've got to be honest with ourselves and the public. Having 30% more residents to look after and fewer staff and not the teamwork networks we have with 3-member wards will mean many councillors will be under more stress to deliver more with less support, and then we should just be honest and say so. So support the amendment, put a marker down, we're not happy. Go for the amendment the motion moved by Nick, because it's the least worst scenario. But let's be honest what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hinks.
Lord Mayor, it's a privilege to I'm delivering this first speech tonight in the ward that I represent, so I'm really proud and welcome everyone to Everton. I wanted this first speech to be centred around the Merchant Navy, which I belong to. Unfortunately, because of the issues this council face, I'm compelled to give this time on the important subject of the Calorie Board's proposal for a single ward representation. Well, I don't know where the information for such absurd proposals originated from of single wards, but what I can state is in the wards in which I represent has the most deprived percentages of any ward in the city, of deprivation, of high poverty and unemployment. And we want to take away a vital necessity to represent the people who badly need us at this time. The proposal today of 85/30 is the absolute minimum that we can go to. This government has orchestrated a reintroducement of managed decline, and this government also is trying to bankrupt our residents in this city of any hope of living a normal life as they do in other parts of this country. And I recently wrote to the commissioners, and I've informally invited them to take a tour around Everton and see for themselves of what people live like in this area. And Lord Mayor, I'll just leave you with this. The words and the lyrics of a famous songwriter, Ralph McTell. Let me take you by the hand and lead you through the streets of Everton, and I'll show you something that will make you change your mind. Thank you.
Getting in before me. Alfie, well done. Maiden speech. Second time round the block, but well done. We missed it. Right, Councillor Kushner.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. And I think what Alfie and Councillor Hinks has said is absolutely spot on. And in a way, what he's describing there is what we are, as all of us from all parties as elected representatives. We are the embodiment of representative democracy. We are not the embodiment of local bureaucracy. We are local democracy. The reduction of taking 5 councillors away, whether they be Liberal, end up being Liberal Democrat councillors or Green ones or Liberal ones or Labour ones, saddens me. Because as Councillor Radford rightly said, when you take away councillors, that doesn't increase democracy, that only seeks to reduce it. The LGA said that the most persuasive submissions that they receive are those which, rather than considering whether the current number ought not to be changed, but rather reflect on what number of councillors would be required if the council were newly established. So we made that case in January on the basis of the key principles of the Boundary Commission on strategic leadership, accountability and community leadership. And we reached the conclusion that 90 is the appropriate number. The reason why we're having to accept 85 tonight is because the most persuasive submission is that by the Secretary of State, the Conservative one, telling us that we have to reduce the number of councillors in our city. That, incidentally, cuts across one of the key principles of the operation of the Boundary Commission, which is its independence from political interference from the government. And this is through the back door, through commissioners who are paid for and accountable to the Secretary of State, not to any single one of us as elected members in this city. And it may be that they consider that 5 councillors are disposable. I don't think that that is the case. The LGA described their definition of representative democracy as providing a bridge between the community and the council, because we meet members of the community on a regular basis. They understand and vote and support or not for us based on our values, and they're different in different parts of the city. And on the basis of those values, we take forward our policies that our officers can discharge and put into practice in the most effective way. And if they don't like what we're doing and our values and what we're doing, then they'll vote us out. They won't vote for the Chief Executive or any of the legal officers or anyone else to be voted out, because it's different. They sign a contract of employment as employees of the council. We pledge an oath based on the principles of representative democracy. And I would just say that we here have inherited, we're in the same, this isn't the chamber that we normally operate in, but within the council chamber, this is the same chamber, the same people as us, 150 years ago, who made the political decision to build the first council houses, the public housing of this country, to bring into place the first medical director in the history of this country, in this city. And we've done lots of other things. I would say the capital of culture decision that we tried to go down, which has helped to rejuvenate the confidence of our city. All the decisions that we've made around hardship support, not closing necessary services in our city, like the children's centres, based on our political values, based on our oath, based on the principles of representative democracy. And I would just say, let's have a look at where that representative democracy no longer operates. Let's take the health service, the CCG, and all the other institutions, the trusts, and all the other organisations that run the health service in this city have no political representation on their governing bodies. So where do they reflect those values and the feelings and that bridge that we can bring between our communities and the people in the city with the decisions that we have to take in places like the CCG? The same can say the same about housing. Can we honestly feel in our hearts that there are 19, I think I'm right in saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, the housing associations in the city? There is no political representation on any single one of them. Can we say that they honestly reflect, as we have to do in decisions that we take, the views and values of the city, of the residents, of the people that we meet on a regular basis, as a bridge between the community and the council and the key functions that there are in this city. So, of course, I will vote for 85 tonight because of the options that we've been given, but I'm going to do with sadness. But I hope that the Boundary Commission, who will ultimately make the decisions about the numbers of councillors in this city, pay regard to the reasons why we have had to make a submission of 85. And I hope that they will take note of the excellent, comprehensive, detailed piece of work that was done in January that came to the conclusion that the appropriate number is 90. Thank you.
Councillor Kemp, can I be really mean? And it's not intended to be rude. Would you speak on that side? I can't hear them. I know, but I can't hear from that microphone for some reason. We just want you on the left.
I've been on the left all my life, my Lord Mayor, but the sensible left, rather than something you see in the city. My Lord Mayor, first of all, I too want to join in and thank our officers, and particularly Mike Jones, for the work they've done. My understanding is there have been 26 iterations of this report, never mind the 20-odd that happened in January. So there's been a tremendous amount of work done to produce a comprehensive report. I share much of what's already been said, as do my colleagues. This is a sad day for democracy in this city. This council has been bullied, bludgeoned, and ultimately blackmailed into submission. The reduction in numbers, let me be clear, is the only thing that is before us today. The Boundary Commission Working Group will have to come back and give us details of how they will deal with the splitting up of the 85 seats that's created. So I absolutely agree that moving away from a three-member system is bad. But that's a debate to be held on December the 8th, when we will consider the details of our submission. And I also think there's been a misunderstanding about the role of the commissioners and the role of the Boundary Commission. I've actually spoken to the Boundary Commission, and they have assured me, and in fact, what was the MHCLG Minister in the House of Lords has confirmed this, that the Boundary Commission is an independent body and will consider the representation from us free from government interference. And I accept them at their word, and I accept the Commissioner's role in doing it. So it is worth flagging up the problems that will be created by single-member constituencies. It will cause problems with creating the diversity in this chamber. I keep using that word, it's not quite the chamber, is it? Which will give us the diversity of age, gender, ethnicity and physical abilities. And many of you will remember the very moving speech made by my colleague Councillor McAllister-Bell in his maiden speech about the problems caused with someone who lives with Crohn's disease, which can often very much inhibit his work. But as I say before, that is an argument for another day. In fact, the numbers, to my mind, should not be reduced. And that's why Liberal Democrats have done what I would urge the other parties to do. We have resubmitted as our submission to the Boundaries Commission the original report as agreed unanimously in January in Council. It is not the only way to get information to them to pass a motion at this meeting. So we've taken the democratic route of saying what we as a party believe. And there is no reason why the other parties here could not do likewise. But I cannot support the amendment that's moved today for two reasons. Firstly, is that paragraphs E and G on here are superfluous. Already contained in the So we're going to destroy something, and then we're going to recreate it. It doesn't make sense. It's not logical. It's not our fault. But the best way to deal with this today is to deal with what's before us on the agenda and what isn't, and make a cogent case to the Boundaries Commission that our way of splitting up that 85 will be a decent way, a way which can mitigate some, but not all, of the problems that we know will arise. My Lord Mayor, I support the motion on that basis, but I'm making clear that because we believe that we've been bludgeoned into it, we will actually abstain on the motion rather than do what we'd otherwise wanted to do, which is actually to oppose it.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other speakers? If not, we'll now go to a vote on the addendum. Those in favour of the addendum, show of hands, please. Those against? Are there any abstentions? It was 59 against, 7 for, so the addendum is lost. We'll now vote on the substantive motion. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That was 57 for, no one against, 13 abstentions, so that was carried. We will move on to item 9. Councillor Tom Logan on the nomination of local authority representative governors.
Thank you. These nominations came to me a while ago and it's taken quite some time to get through the system. And the team responsible look to make appointments basically at every council meeting because there's always some vacancies popping up. These ones are mostly reappointments and appointments where the school has sourced the prospective governor. Previously, officers have always worked to complete this in a non-political basis, as officers do, and I'm pleased to accept these, and I'm sure they'll be recommended by the council. But in future, I am intending to be working with schools and communities to have more of a focus on appointing governors. There's basically far too many boards of governors that lack diversity. So as I said, I'll be working with schools and communities, and in future council meetings intend to bring in recommendations for appointments of governors that will increase the diversity of the boards of our schools. Thank you.
Councillor. Is that agreed? Wonderful. You're all very quiet tonight. Item 10, changes in committee membership and appointments to outside bodies. Councillor Ruth Bennett.
Can I move that the changes in committee membership and appointments to outside bodies as attached to this note at Appendix C be approved insofar as these relate to the Labour group?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Malcolm Kelly.
Sorry, I think it's this one. The character going has been delayed.
Oh, it's in the appendix. So, are we agreed? Are we agreed? Thank you. Item 11, development of a council plan. Can I invite Mayor Joanne to introduce and start this debate, which seeks to inform development of a council plan. The Mayor will be followed by a brief address from our Cabinet members on each of the 6 themes of the City Plan, on which our council plan will be based. Councillor Joanne, over to you. Councillor Joanne, Mayor Joanne, I'm so sorry.
You're all right, thank you, Lord Mayor. When we were developing the manifesto, we consulted with lots of people. We got feedback from 177 people online, and our campaign team and various stakeholders got together to identify some of the priorities for the city. That's where we come up with things like the triple lock, which would ensure that every decision we make will have a positive impact on the environment, on social inclusion, social value, and equality and diversity and inclusion. As part of that manifesto, we will develop a city plan for our council, probably starting at the end of the month or early November. Our council plan will look at our priorities in terms of our manifesto, but also the objectives of the city plan. The city plan has a number of stakeholders and anchor institutions that are based in our city that are working together on a common goal to make our city more equitable, more prosperous, I can't say it, sorry, more prosperous, someone say it for me, prosperous, anyone's getting it wrong, more prosperous, greener, healthier, better for everybody to live. What we put in our manifesto is the same as what we've got in the city plan. We all want the same goal. But what we have to do now is get down into the objectives and the outcomes that we want to see in the next 12 months. So this is your opportunity to contribute to some of the priorities that are identified in the city plan that will work our way into the council plan, which of course you will all have an opportunity to contribute to. So our cabinet leads in relation to their particular area are going to talk about the manifesto priorities and the city plan priorities of which you can make a contribution at this particular meeting of what you want to see in the next 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Major. Councillor Harry Doyle.
I'll try 2 minutes, but might just go slightly over. Sorry, Lord Mayor. Can I first just say...
Really try.
I will really try. First, I just obviously welcome everyone as well to obviously Lifestyles Everton Park. It'd be remiss of me. I know Mark Lancaster would absolutely well, he'd be annoyed if we didn't promote Lifestyles membership. So if you're able, you want to get fit, please join. Lord Mayor, I don't think there's a single person in this room right now that wouldn't agree that Liverpool is the best city. Of course, we're biased. But whether it's music, sport, heritage, nightlife or the people, our city is a destination for all. And as we look towards the future, we must as a council acknowledge the importance of this sector and the ability to generate income that can be used to support other service areas within the council. The visitor economy, of course, has suffered greatly over the last 18 months. Whilst recent data shows that we are starting to bounce back post-COVID, we must ensure that our city keeps up that momentum, attracting visitors from across the world to experience what our city has to offer. We have a number of hurdles to overcome in this city, however, with the challenges of Brexit slowly starting to surface. A lack of skilled staff in the hospitality industry is just one example. How do we attract and retain talent in that sector and ensure that they are in a secure and well-paid employment? These are questions that we must answer in our emerging council plan. We have a number of incidents, I've mentioned this evening, we've had a number of incidents of hate crime here in the city recently as well, and it brings into disrepute our reputation as an inclusive city. I'm proud of the work that we're doing with the LGBTQ+ community to make sure that we reclaim our streets, but also have an artistic approach and cultural approach to address the issues. I'm also proud of the work that we're doing in regards to accessibility in the city across the visitor economy. And I'd like to particularly thank Councillor Pam Thomas and our working group in supporting us in that objective. We need to see more localised events across the city to ensure all our communities feel the benefit and there is a long-lasting impact in them. Cultural-led regeneration has the ability to once again transform our city. And my Lord Mayor, just in finishing, our city has come a long way, and the Capital of Culture in 2008 was just the beginning of our journey. I like to mention my age a lot, but it's important to mention that in the context of this, my generation has only ever known our city to be the vibrant, outward-facing, inclusive destination city that we see today. And that's because of the hard work of all our city partners and council officers over the years. The city plan's a vision, and it gives us an opportunity to see through a different lens, re-evaluate our city's offer, address ongoing and upcoming issues, and ultimately provide that generational change for our city, cementing our status as the most exciting city in the UK, or I'd say the world. Thanks, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sarah Doyle.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll keep it brief. I will be leading on the fourth theme in our city plan, a strong and inclusive economy. As the political leadership, we want to ensure that local people have access to high-paid and skilled jobs. We also want to make sure that these jobs contribute to our city and regional well-being. We also want to ensure that our great businesses in the social enterprise sector have growth opportunities, as social businesses have filled the gap during COVID-19, and we want to enable an environment for them to expand in Liverpool and collaboratively support our communities. We want to set out greater measurements for good business, making sure that everyone we work with in the city takes account of financial return, social returns and environmental responsibilities. We also want to ensure a real living wage so that people have more money to spend locally to support our local economy, but equally, if not more important, to live a good standard of life without falling into poverty. Our recovery plan, alongside our city plan, will focus on measurable targets when we assess our economic growth and be underpinned by equality for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tom Logan.
Thank you. Earlier this week, I wrote to all teachers and school staff in Liverpool to explain my admiration and awe for the work that goes on day to day in the schools across our city. Now, at the same time, we have too many children in Liverpool do not get a good deal from our education system. As a council, we're in the early stages of an improvement journey, and it's a really exciting time to be in this position and to be in this position in this city. I'm very hopeful and optimistic for the future, and we will improve educational outcomes for children of Liverpool, for all the children of Liverpool. Once those children leave school, what happens next? I don't think it's clear enough for a lot of those people. This city's economy hasn't recovered from the global financial crisis in 2008, before COVID struck, and these next 3 months between now and Christmas could be incredibly vital time for our city. As a city and a council, we need a vision for our potential workforce. Whether that be children leaving school, adults changing jobs, adults getting jobs for the first time or the first time in a long time. We need to provide people with an aspirational vision for the future. The council plan will be our opportunity to do that. As a council, we need to work together over the coming months to provide that vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fraser-Lake.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Of the 6 aims of the City Plan, I'll be working on a healthier, happier, fairer Liverpool for all. This ties into some of the work that our teams are doing already and allows us to build on the projects that we've got existing even further. This aim ties directly into both social care and health, so the new amalgamated portfolio is coming really handy here. Working with our early health teams, we're working to ensure that everyone's got the best start in life, and linking in with our public health teams to build even further on that to reduce health inequalities. The focus for this aim is going to be healthy children and families, people with long-term conditions, people with complex lives, and people who are frail and have dementia. We're already hitting the ground running, like I say, with our teams, and work has already begun. To name but a few, we've had the relaunch of Always Help available to support our homelessness and rough sleeping strategy, focusing on prevention for rough sleepers and homelessness, investing in our partners at Liverpool Charity and Voluntary Services, now CVS, to support, focus and resource on addressing mental health issues and emotional well-being, whilst also tackling isolation and loneliness. There's been an allocation of the COVID winter grant funding to complement a range of ongoing work to minimise the impacts of COVID-19 on vulnerable households and groups such as care leavers and young carers, and it's essential to mitigate the impact on some of the hardest hit elements of Liverpool's communities. Like I said, that's just a few, but there's a lot more work going on, and that will continue. Work will continue on this, and I would welcome members' input onto this, because the only way that we're going to achieve a healthier, happier, fairer Liverpool is with every single person in this room's buy-in. So I'd welcome any comments and thoughts that people have when the Lord Mayor opens this up for debate, so we can achieve this aim. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Abdul Kadir.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I will be leading on the safer and thriving neighbourhoods. One of the priorities for me will be the 20-minute neighbourhoods, which is also called the 10-minute and 15 minutes. So if you get confused, it's any of them, you're quite right there. We won't have the disagreement which one I'm going to be picking, but let's call it 20 minutes. So this work is being started from the previous cabinet members, Barry Kushner and Liz Parsons, and it was a model started in Picton Ward, and that's where I really truly seen the benefit of it. It aims to bring about more partnership work. It brings partners into the forefront of actually doing things instead of us taking the step to mobilise, to lead. It looks at what the needs are for individual wards, and each one is totally different with its own challenges. So it will look at how it meets that particular ward needs. It breaks the cycle of fragmentation when approaching resolutions for issues. Currently, we have an example of if you've got a fly tipping, there's a different policy, whether it's in the iron tree, whether it's in someone's garden, whether it's in the high street. That will all go because there'll be one focus of everybody is responsible to deal with it, and nobody should turn a blind eye to it. It gives a voice to the residents who will be at the core of all this, and they will have the say how it will be planned out and how officers, elected members will be engaging with that. So thank you for listening, and hope I haven't went too far. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dan Barrington.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Climate change is the biggest threat we face as a planet, and this council declared a climate emergency in 2019 and set a net zero carbon target by 2030. Reducing carbon emissions to net zero across all of our activities and those of our partners and residents is now essential to combat the threat of accelerating climate change, both on our planet but also the local impacts of a challenging climate. It won't be easy, but we as a council and as a city accept the challenge and believe that delivering emission reductions will have many co-benefits and help us deliver a fairer, sustainable city. We have accelerated our low-carbon initiatives across housing, transport, energy, green spaces and biodiversity, amongst others. We have more recently worked with Eunomia, specialist consultants, and have completed preparatory work to understand where our emissions come from, how we can best target and prioritise actions to give the city a clear route map to work on to 2030. 60% of our emissions in the city come from our buildings, and of that, our city's housing stock accounts for 40% of the total emissions. We need a massive retrofitting programme, and we need government to take this seriously and provide more funding. We also need to develop the skills in this vital area and help build a greener economy. At 36%, transport is the second largest contributing sector to carbon emissions in Liverpool. We need to reduce travel demand by car and have a modal shift towards active travel and better public transport built into all of our projects. Working with our public sector organisations such as health, education, housing providers and with our residents and businesses is really important. Their commitment and action to reduce carbon emissions is critical. If we want to get our city to net zero, then everyone will need to play their part. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I open this up to debate, can I first of all invite the group leaders, each of the group leaders, to comment in turn. And first I will invite Councillor Kemp. You're enjoying it, Richard, admit it.
Well, just to liven things up, I will have a few comments to say about the failure of the Labour Party, so just hang on for that, and I hope you enjoy it. My Lord Mayor, this is the second debate of the day in which the Liberal Democrats have to draw attention to a democratic deficit within this city. Many people think that this plan is a city council document. It's called the city plan. We are the city council. But it's not a city council plan. It might have been discussed by members of the former members of the cabinet, but it's never come here for approval. This is a document that's been signed by 15 chief executives or their equivalent, 2 of whom have already left Liverpool and 1 is about to. And it's the tail wagging the dog. It should be this council that sets out the vision and the direction for the city, because we're the only people in this city who've been elected and given a mandate to do that. Not 15 chief executives, only 1 of whom is accountable to the people of Liverpool through a democratic process, and that's ours. This document needs a lot of work, because I have been staggered by the fact that contained within it and in the speeches made tonight, there are 2 vital words that haven't been issued at all. And those words are social housing. And in addition to that, there's no mention of the other thing that we need: low-cost homes ownership. And just to make sure we're awake, this is where I have a go at the Labour Party. For 10 years, all this council has allowed to be built in this city, in all honesty, are expensive mansions at the behest of Red Road Joe, and student pods, apartments and 1-bedroom flats, some of which will never be built.
Councillor, before you go any further, can you be very, very careful with your words? I didn't like it. You thought you'd got away with it. You didn't.
No,
carry on.
I am very careful. I always know what I'm saying, even if sometimes I pretend I don't.
We are being live streamed as well.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that, and I always stand accountable, my Lord Mayor, for everything that I say and can justify it. But to come back to the main point, this document contains no systematic review of what our housing needs are. So Councillor Kadir is right, we need to build up the city with a mix of everything. But what is that mix? How many low-cost home ownership do we need? How many houses for rent? How many houses for social rent? In a city where, quite frankly, you know and I know there is a housing crisis being forced upon us by government policies. To date, we've been able to build council houses since 2017. We've built none so far. We have 20 in a programme, and there are no more in a programme till 2023. And those are the figures, of course, that were given to me at the last council meeting. There are 2 other areas I want to comment on briefly. The first is that in the healthier section, and indeed of the signatories, we see no sign of the signature of the most important doctor in this city, and that is Professor Dr. Matt Ashton, the Director of Public Health. Yes, there are some outputs attributed to the way of preventing things happening in this city, but I believe that the work of the Director ought to be absolutely explicit in every other policy of this council, because the gap between the rich and the poor, the people that die early and the people that die young, is ever widening. And lastly, I want to comment on another gap, and that's a big gap in this city between the big projects and the small projects which are going to get the community into work. I think it was marvellous to see, I think the Mayor was there, certainly the Chief Executive was the one on the telly, the opening of the new health activities near Kensington and near the university. But how many of the jobs there will go to Kensington residents? It's great to see some work going on in the North Docks, but how many of those will go to the residents of Kirkdale and Everton? And we know we can see marvellous things in the city centre.
Councillor Kemp, can I ask you to stop?
Yeah, I'm 2 paragraphs and I'll finish. Yeah. We can already look at the shops in Liverpool 1, which is surrounded by areas of highest ethnicity, and see hardly any representatives of our black and ethnic minorities working behind the counter or in the front of office, front of shop activities in the leisure services. So, my Lord Mayor, this is a starting point today. It's a starting point not just for us to discuss, it's a starting point for us to go out and have conversations with every neighbourhood, Councillor Kadir, every resident, every community in this city, because we can't allow the city to be run by chief executives. It's got to be run by us with the support of the people of Liverpool. Let's get on with it.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So notwithstanding Councillor Kemp's comment about the democratic deficit here and the sort of validity of this document, I'm going to focus on a couple of areas where I do see some sort of green shoots, some promise, and some signs that, in the jargon, the improvement journey does seem to be potentially something that's going to start bearing some fruit. So I remember when I looked at the first similar document to this, a city plan that was produced around the time when Tony Reeves became chief executive. And in that document, there wasn't a single mention of climate change, of sustainability. It just wasn't in there. And when I raised that issue, when I queried that, I was told that that's because we just have to worry about money. And of course, the austerity has hit Liverpool hard, and I agree we do have to worry about money, but not at the expense of everything else. So in 2 or 3 years, we have moved from completely ignoring the issue of the environment to having it as one of the central planks in a document like this. Obviously, I'm frustrated that we are seeing a lack of action, but having the aspiration is a first step. I do wonder if there's a tension that we're going to have to address at some point. We heard from Councillor Doyle first about the exciting city and it attracting people from all over the city, and Councillor Barrington was the final speaker. Does that say something about where we prioritise that tension between the visitor economy and tackling the climate emergency? I don't know. But another positive that I take from this document is a kind of focus on outcomes for the people of Liverpool, commitment to working collaboratively, promoting equality, the sustainable development goals and young people. If we've got our priorities right and we've got our principles in place, then whatever happens with our level of resources, whatever happens with how much we can deliver, we'll be making the best use of our resources. So I think having those priorities set is a positive. It's not so long ago that I think the only focus in this city was on invest to earn and ensuring that as many deals got done as possible. It seemed at that time like the only key performance indicator in Liverpool was the number of cranes in the skyline, and obviously that didn't do the city very well, as it turns out. So I do think this plan represents a step forward, but we do need to see some objectives set. We need to see some concrete actions. How are we going to get to where we are now, to a fair, clean, safe and zero carbon city? So there's a lot of work still to do, but I'm hopeful we might be set in the right course. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Radford.
My Lord Mayor, over the years, 40 years as a councillor, we've seen lots and lots of big plans and big documents. But actually, sometimes it's actually what happens on the street that the residents are asking about that doesn't fit in the grand plan. And therefore, I'm just going to ask you, or the team today, 4 comments of residents on the street are asking that may not show up as a priority in the big plan. One of the biggest issues I think we've got to face, as in here and now, is we have approximately a 12% lower level of double vaccination than other parts of the country. And I know Councillor Lake has been very supportive, and I'll be up front with that. Certainly we worked on advertising vaccination, mobile buses and the like, and I think it'd be fair to say we played our part as local councillors. But I think as a city, if we're going to avoid a midwinter lockdown or a bed blocking crisis in the winter, we need to now really think, how can we get the large proportions of adults who are potentially medically vulnerable, encourage them to vaccinate? Don't worry, I'm not going to do a bid Justin Trudeau and ask for compulsory vaccinations. That's one thing my Liberal colleagues in Canada I'll disagree with. However, we need to think how we sell that. And I think we need to look at some of the other countries. I saw a terrific programme of the Health Minister for Taiwan and how they were using literally feisty cartoon characterizations of making it attractive to get the message over vaccination. So I think we've got an immediate need. We need to all think out of the box how we can do it to prevent us having to go into a lockdown and to prevent Liverpool hospitals being log-jammed with people seriously ill. That is avoidable. The second problem, I'm getting feedback from local housing companies and local builders and local residents, is this city is littered with small development sites that are stuck in probate, derelict houses stuck or untraceable ownership, or over the years the council's big partners have said are not viable to develop. I know from working with local builders in Dewbrook, we have converted and recycled derelict land into small housing sites, sometimes of 10 units on Lowndes Road or 12 units at St George's Pub. It can be done, and it provides local employment, reduce the risks, and the feedback I'm getting, my Lord Mayor, is the council are not replying to local developers and are not replying to requests of expression of interest and not following through with transfers that previously agreed. So if we want to help the employment market, we want to improve the housing stock without building on green space, and we want to encourage local labour, then we need to be doing more to support the local businesses, recycling derelict land and derelict houses into development sites. And that is a real beef. I've had 5 complaints over the last few weeks. And lastly, my Lord Mayor, the biggest beef of residents walking around, even this morning I got, is we know how successful the communal bin system is. We know how it reduced the vermin. We know how it actually encourages greater use of recycling, which is an environmental bonus. As ward councillors, we've offered to put up money to pay to fast-track the communal bins. We've offered to go and do the legwork on canvassing residents. There is a massive need and a massive benefit to the city financially to improve the rollout of communal bins. And I beg the council to follow through with the site visit Abdul did with us. And I say that with the greatest respect. No point visiting us, but there's no follow-through. We'd like to see a follow-through of how to improve the rollout, because if people are seeing the streets littered, people don't want to invest in the city or stay in the city. We need to improve basic cleanliness. That's not the big plan. That's the day in and day out life of the residents in many of the terraced communities who feel neglected.
I've got 2 other hands up already. Are there any other people that wish to speak? Indicate clearly. Speak clearly like me. Sarah, Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I don't often speak at council, never mind twice, because I do believe that actions speak louder than words, but I felt compelled to come back on Councillor Kemp's comments, so I hope he doesn't mind hearing from one of the babes in the woods, as he's referred to us previously. So I just want to make it clear that this is the city plan, and although the aims do not mention housing directly in any of them, housing is at the very heart of many of these themes. They're at the themes of a strong inclusive economy, they're at the themes of a healthier, happier, fairer Liverpool for all, and I know Councillor Lake will support on this, as we've spoken about the connection between healthiness and good homes. I also want to bring on to the point of Councillor Kemp saying that we, because it wasn't mentioned, it doesn't mean that we're not thinking of it. I would urge Councillor Kemp to attend maybe some of the housing select committees, to look at the reports that have been sent out where we talk about where housing is placed, where it's in the draft housing strategy, and there we will go into detail about some of the ways that we will rectify the things that have gone wrong in the city, the way that we would democratise land in the city, the way that we will bring community-led housing into the city. And I also urge him to look at my select committee report for tomorrow, where we talk about the social value measuring that's happening in Festival Gardens, in Paddington North, in developments, where I agree we need to make sure that these developments bring a benefit to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fraser-May.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just to comment on some of what's been said, I mean, like Sarah, I also wouldn't come up twice. I just wanted to point out something that Councillor Radford had mentioned. So, with regards to the vaccination programme, at the moment, I wouldn't be doing my job right if I didn't sort of plug this while I'm here. Our current rate at the moment of vaccination for first dose is 69.2%, and those who had a second dose is 62%. So it's nowhere near where we need it to be or where we'd like it to be to ensure that we're protecting our city. What I would say is that we are consulting and working with all ward members to make sure that when something's going on in their ward, that they're aware of it, so that you can all make sure that it's being promoted out across all the stakeholders in the community. We need to really work together, and when we're talking about working together to achieve a healthier, fairer city, don't get me wrong, I don't want to just concentrate on COVID, because there's a lot more behind public health that sits there. But at the moment, given the situation that we're in, we all need to make sure that we're sticking together, pushing those messages out there to ensure that we're keeping our friends, our family and our residents safe. I want to finally touch just on the point that infection rates at the moment, although today did calm down a little bit, over the last few weeks we saw a surge in cases up to the same levels of where they were in January, where we were in national lockdown. And I want to just finish and say that in terms of the roadmap out of lockdown that we had this year, one of the tests that the government had set was that as long as infections don't risk unsustainable pressure on the NHS, And I say that knowingly that in our hospitals at the moment in Liverpool and our critical care units, we are at a high capacity. It's not slowing down there. The ambulance service is under a lot of pressure, the hospitals and the NHS in general. So I would urge everyone to take that in mind. And when you are promoting those messages out, or if you do get communications from myself or the communications team, push those messages out in the communities, because actually we could risk further restrictions being imposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Liz Parsons.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I was lucky to be at one of the launch events for the initial piece of work around the city plan with our partners, and it took place in the town hall. And it was actually great to hear from those 15 organisations that have signed up to this, because what was really positive was that every single one of them, whether it was education, it was health, it was Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service, it was the police, they were all absolutely committed to supporting the vision and aims of this council. You know, what this administration wants for the people in this city. So I'm kind of okay with that. If people want to come along for the ride and support us in what we want to do for people, that's pretty fantastic in my book. We achieve more together than we do alone. What's most important for me is how we move that strategic plan into clear actions for the people in this city, so that residents are actually engaged with shaping their own neighbourhoods and making sure that what we deliver is what they want for their communities. Mayor Anderson said right at the beginning that what follows this is a detailed set of plans about how we actually deliver this vision, and that's the key that's really important. So I'm massively keen to get involved. I don't want to do to the people in this city, I want to work with them, because that's what's really, really important, to make sure that this happens and that what we end up with is a city where the residents have ownership and want to be part of what we're delivering. So businesses want to come on board? Absolutely fantastic in my book. Let's work with those 15 partners to really develop and shape change in a way that residents want to. So I'm fully on board and look forward to feeding in with you. Fantastic.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chris Brown. Oh, thank you. You're being thoughtful.
First time I've been put on the left, but here you go. He gets it. Okay, I wasn't planning to speak, Lord Mayor, but I felt I had to respond. Councillor Crone mentioned that this document starts to introduce green shoots. I actually think this does this. The seeds are still very much in the bag waiting to be planted, and I take this in regards to cycling. There's a huge picture on the low carbon connected and accessible city of somebody looking like they're going for a cycle ride, except that there is only one mention of cycling within this document. Underneath that, there is a line to say safeguard and prioritise funding for the city's environment. Yet we're not off to a great start when we're scrapping cycle schemes. And money is ultimately suspended from the government at this time. I have no, unless the Cabinet member wants to update Council, I have no clue whether that money will be released and how we are ultimately going to make this document a reality. So that needs to be worked on. There's nothing in relation to recycling rates. We have some of the poorest recycling rates in the country. That needs to be as part of this document. It is, as Councillor said, I think, a work in progress and needs a lot more work, but I felt that the section, particularly on low carbon, connected, accessible city, wasn't up to standard. Today is Car Free Day. Other than a few tweets that I have seen from our Twitter account, I haven't seen much in the way of the council promoting anything in relation to that. So I think we can do far better as part of this section itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Anna Rothery.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. You just heard Councillor Kemp mention the issue around visibility within the black community in this city. And while this might be part and parcel of the delivery of the plan for the city plan, I'm aghast at the time that it's taken for this city to take its responsibility seriously in terms of equality and inclusion. In 2012, I spoke at the United Nations as the first elected member to ever speak at the UN on religious, linguistic and ethnic minority differences and the future of those groups within a modern city. They were so impressed with the commitment that this city gave that they rolled it out across the UN, and the city received a fantastic accolade for our intentions in terms of the equality agenda. In 2014, the UN sent the rapporteur, the Working Party for People of African Descent, to this city to take evidence around education, employment, business, and all the other sectors where the underrepresentation exists. It was a shameful indictment of what this city has done. They went back and their findings reported that this city's visibility of black people was near on non-existent. I don't often agree with Councillor Kemp, but I do agree with the lack of visibility in terms of employment and business in this city. From 2010, when I was elected, to 2019, I tried to set up the Equality Guardians in this city, working across the sectors with different communities, different cultures. We are not a homogenous group. We are made up of many different people under the banner of black and diverse communities. 4 times I attempted to do this. Finally, on completion in 2019, whereby we had Tracy Gore, who chaired the committee to look at equality recently, and also Mayor Anderson made a contribution. The Equality Guardians came up with a strategy that should be deeply embedded in the Liverpool plan. It looked at mental health within the black community. It looked at healthcare within the black community, employment, education. It also looked at the judicial system, how black men are overrepresented within this system, within this city and further afield. It is a crucial component that must be taken responsibly forward. Rather than throwing the baby out with the bathwater, we need to make sure that we make a firm commitment going forward, that this isn't just lip service as it's been for many, many decades in this city, that we finally make a real commitment to the people of this city. Our diversity is growing week by week. We've got first, second, third, fourth generation people in this country and in this city. We've also got new and emerging communities who are coming here and seeking refuge in this city. We need to be offering aspirations to all of our residents. And when we talk about city plans and we talk about we're doing what we do for everybody, I'm pretty much sick and tired of that everybody does not include black and diverse communities. I'll finish there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So I tend to speak each time, sorry. But I wanted to say a few words around environment because it's really important. Now, I'm really pleased that environment is one of our triple locks in all the decisions that we do. Now, climate emergency must be and is addressed by all the people, stakeholders, organizations, businesses, big and small, activists, and us politicians too. It is the school children and their climate strikes that kept climate agenda at the forefront of the news for months, and not only when we have UN climate change conferences, like we are going to have now in Glasgow in this fall. Of course, climate is a global issue, and solid promises were made for COP21 in Paris in 2015, but they are still not implemented through policies and actions, and this is obviously worldwide. The newest IPCC report puts us on code red. Climate change is widespread, rapid, and intensifying. Now, we can hope that international efforts at COP26 in Glasgow will be ambitious, but we are here in Liverpool, and in Liverpool we must do our bit and make it bold too. Become the model city if we can. We are blessed through our geographical position. We are on the banks of River Mersey with potential capacity to create tidal barrage and have our own energy, and we have the wind too. Burbo Bank, as you know, offshore. These are not within our scope as the Liverpool City Council, but we do have to be thinking in connection. I'm glad to hear when Dunne was speaking, he was talking very much about the statistics as well and how much of our carbon emissions we are creating. And it is, please let's remember, 60% of those are from the buildings. So that's from the residential, that is 40%. So we do have to undertake a massive retrofitting in the city, and that means skilling people too, and making sure that we have a capacity to actually do this. And not just residential homes, but also historical buildings too. So that's very important. And all of our new housing, our new buildings have to be zero carbon, which is Passive House standard, which is internationally recognized standard for zero carbon. And so when we are building our new city, we have to make sure that there are integrated transport links and that we really reimagine the city. Now, I welcome this document, and it is a vision document, and it's important to have a good vision, to have a vision for the green city. And I do hope that one day, when we talk about Liverpool, we will also be talking in the same line as we talk about other green European cities when we mention, for example, Berlin or Copenhagen or Amsterdam, because Liverpool really has that capacity. So let's make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just a question around health and well-being for people in our city. The full effect of the orchestrated, managed decline of the Peter Lloyd Sports Centre can now be seen in that the centre is to remain closed way beyond the promised date for reopening. Considering we questioned the state of disrepair of Peter Lloyd Centre over 3.5 years ago, can I ask now, how do we come to a position where we currently don't know how much work is to be carried out, how much it will cost, and when work will begin, with no estimates and no sign of any beginnings? Can I ask Councillor Doyle to give ward councillors some clarity in this matter as soon as possible? And in asking that, I'm no way implying any complicity on your part.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Doyle, would you like to respond?
Just briefly. Councillor Lake obviously understands what you just said there. Obviously I emailed the ward councillors last night actually regarding this issue. I do find it, however, really disheartening actually that we all sat in the chamber back at the start of the virtual chamber And this council, this Labour council, actually invested over £500,000 in that centre. It's a centre that I am absolutely passionate about. In fact, not that this matters, Lord Mayor, it's actually my local centre as well. We are very passionate about lifestyles and what it means to the people of our city. The reason why it's been pushed back slightly is only because the scale of the works were much greater than what were expected. Now, I would rather the centre be open to a good standard, all works to a good standard, rather than open it here and there and it close for maintenance all over again. Anyway, we need consistency in the service, and that's what's going to happen. But I would just repeat the message. We've invested heavily and potentially even more in Peter Lloyd centres, and that should show our commitment as a council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Abdul Kadir.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I've heard some of the responses to this debate, and to be honest, some of them I don't think were even listening about what this is about. This is about the city plan. It's called the city plan. The council plan, not the city plan. And this is why you talk about democracy, you want to get involved. This is why we're bringing it to you, to give you an early heads up about what we are intending to do. I also heard about the criticism about where we fit into the carbon economy and environment. We have something called the triple lock, if everyone was listening to the Mayor what she was saying. Isn't that enough for you to hear it? And not just hear it, but also see it through the whole council. And that's a commitment for all the officers, all the elected members, to be focused on that triple lock. We talk about projects in local wards, any local issues, please email me directly, because this is not the forum for me to start talking about who gets what and what policies, what issues in the ward. But in terms of anything that we do, whether it's rollout of alleyway, it's always under review, and that's the commitment I've gave to everybody. I will be looking at the effectiveness and the need. It won't be just on one side of the ward, but it'll be across the whole city. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I think there were some excellent contributions there, and I think we need to note the contributions that have been made this evening, and they can help inform the development of the council plan, which is to come to this council in the near future, so you will have your opportunity to have more say on it. Have we got other members? Sorry, Dan?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It was just a quick response to the questions by Councillor Brown. So due to the sinkhole on Prescott Road, we did remove a temporary cycle lane, but plans have been prepared now for a replacement route, and that will go out to consultation soon. But government active travel funding was not used to fund the temporary cycle lane on West Derby Road. The scheme was funded using council funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I've got Councillor William Shortall and then Alan Gibbons. Are there any more people wishing to speak on this item? Hold your hand up now, Tony, you've got it. Anybody else?
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I think this plan is a golden opportunity here. I want to act as a voice, but not the only voice, for disabled people and access. An accessible city is one that we all want. Often you do feel marginalised, I'm not going to lie to you. And sometimes it needs to have that measurable outcome, because often what you get is a lot of paperwork and no measurable outcomes. you know, it's hot air, in other words. It's on a plan, but the plan never seems to develop into something. There's always a better, bigger priority. And one of the things that our Mayor, Joanne, has done is consulted with both myself and Pam Thomas. And we've had a great discussion there because she's an action person, which is really refreshing because it's really easy to promise things and then you never deliver on them. They're inside a plan that never develops for anything because we've had plans in the past, such as the street charter. And really, if I go down to Bolt Street with any one of you, and lots of people here have actually come along electioneering with me and realised actually it's not easy trying to go onto pavement and drop them 3 inches on the floor, cracking your wheelchair. But I've persisted on, and often we just take things for granted. Well, not me, but other people might take, who have no disability, take things for granted. And I want to point out, disability isn't just about being in a wheelchair. You've got Ed Austin. Ed Austin wears a hearing aid. You've got Helen Thompson. She wears a hearing aid. So it's not just about being in a wheelchair. There are hidden, invisible disabilities too. So that should be taken into account. But one of the things that I enjoyed when we had a conversation with our Mayor was the fact that she was prepared to put her money where her mouth was in terms of trying to do actionable outcomes. And that's what we really need here. Actionable outcomes that deliver something rather than just hot air. So thanks for that. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Alan Gibbons. And then Tony, I've got you last. But not least.
Lord Mayor, colleagues, I'd like to refer to the priority in the City Plan to reboot the visitor economy through delivering major events and initiatives and to celebrate and strengthen the sustainability of the city's ambitious, dynamic and diverse culture and heritage organisations. To me, any administration aspiring to socialist values has got to be an internationalist by definition. And in that light, I've been quite uneasy this evening about holding this meeting without referring so far to the huge heart-searching and controversy across this city related to the arms fair. And I hope all our members will be demonstrating in 3 weeks if it does go ahead at the ACC. But whatever happens in relation to this year's immoral and unwanted event, I believe we have to ensure that everything we do in this area makes the people of our city proud, the way we were all proud about the treatment of the Afghan refugees that have been welcomed into this city. And that means we've got to make good on our pledge in the future to have an ethical booking policy and to use our influence to make sure, in terms of bookings and pension investments, for example, we set the highest ethical standards, community above exploitation, morality above money, and peace before war. And that means a widespread public consultation and a rigorous attention to the nature of events organised in our name. We have to make sure that human values are the core of every investment, whether it be housing, whether it be tourism, and then we can be truly proud to be Liverpool.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Conception.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I welcome the city plan, and I represent one of the outskirts wards in our city, Liverpool East, which doesn't really get mentioned a lot of times, but Liverpool East Yew Ward, obviously on the outskirts of the city. So I welcome the opportunity really for this city plan and what it gives to us as local councillors. After all, we are community champions and we represent our communities. So there is opportunities there to take this plan forward, and I really welcome that. One of the things I'd like to see as well is that wherever we can, devolve power away from the town hall into our neighbourhoods to give people a real voice, a real say of what goes on in their communities. But one of the things I'd like to say is that the background that we have in this city, let's not forget, in 2010, when we had a coalition government, we've seen massive cuts to this city, 63% each year, over £400 million a year. And who was part of that coalition government? The Liberal Democrats. They're and we really don't need any lectures from Councillor Kemp. We all know what happened on the Boots estate. Labour in this city has got a proud record. We've built 17 new schools, 8,000 new homes, created 30,000 jobs, and we'll build on that even more. So I welcome the plan, Lord Mayor. Let's take the city forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Conception. I think you were the last speaker, so I will go back to what I was saying earlier before I missed you three guys, and that we will note the contributions that have been made this evening, and some of them, honestly, they were pretty good. And they'll be written up by officers and help to inform the development of the council plan, which, as I said before, will be coming back here. You will be able to have your say on it. Get all the stuff ready in your heads. Thank you, guys. Is that agreed? I nearly missed that bit, didn't I? Right, we're now moving to motions. Councillor Ruth Bennett.
Can I move that the motions set out in items 12 to 18 of the agenda and supplement be referred without debate to the relevant select committee, subject to the inclusion of additional supporting councillors as indicated in the Lord Mayor's note?
Is that agreed? You are wonderful. Tom, can you come over, please? Little discussion. We'll take a 5-minute break while we sort this with Tom.
Stop the stream.